Welcome to this tutorial on using the IDB analyzer to analyze the PIAC data. The IDB analyzer is a standalone application that creates SPSS or SASS syntax to merge data from different countries and to conduct analysis with large-scale assessment data. It works with most large-scale assessments, including PIAC. All file manipulations and calculations are performed with SPSS or SASS. It is configured with PIAC sample design and assessment design settings, and it implements the corresponding and correct variance estimation. To use the IDB analyzer, you will first have to install it. In a separate video, we showed you how to download and install the IDB analyzer. There are two modules in the IDB analyzer, the merge module and the analysis module. In this video, we'll give you a few examples on how to use the analysis module. You can use the analysis module to conduct the following analysis types. You can compute percentages and means, to compute linear regression equations, logistic regression equations, correlation coefficients, percentage of people meeting or exceeding achievement benchmarks with or without dependent variables, and percentiles. To access the analysis module, we launch the IDB analyzer. We get to the home screen. We select between SASS and SPSS. Click on Analysis Module, and we get the Analysis Module screen. Before we work with the Analysis Module, we show you some examples, a few generalities. You will always need at least one grouping or classification variable, and in the case of PIAC, this will be the country identifier. When you run the analysis, you will be producing several output files, and you can save the syntax and run in batch mode at a later date. When working with SPSS, you will get an SPS file with your syntax, you will get an SPV file with your pivot table results, and you will get one or more SAB files and Excel files with the results of your computations. When working with SASS, you would also get a SASS syntax file. You will get the LST and log files that SASS usually produces, and you will get the results in your tables in an HTML formatted file, and also in a comma separated variable file, a CSV file, and a SASS dataset. When you select percentages and means, you're going to be able to compute percentages, means, and standard deviations for selected variables by user-selected subgroups. This module, or this analysis type, will also do significance testing between subgroups. When using linear regression, you'll be able to compute linear regression equations and model statistics. You can run the analysis listwise or pairwise, using listwise or pairwise deletion. And you can also use plausible values as dependent or independent variables in the equation. With logistic regression, you can also compute logistic regression equation and model statistics. And you can use plausible values as dependent or independent variables in the equation. When you use them as dependent variables, you will need to provide a cut point. So it will help you predict the probability of an individual being at or above a particular point in the distribution. When selecting benchmarks, you'll be able to compute percent of people meeting a set of user-specified performance benchmarks. There are two modes to work with the benchmarks: cumulative, which is percent of people at or above given points in the distribution, and discrete, which is looking at percent of people within given points of the distribution. PIAC refers to these benchmarks as proficiency levels, and there's 5 levels: 176, 226, 276, 326, and 376 for the literacy and numeracy scales, and there's 3 levels for the problem-solving scale, those being 241, 291, and 341. You can also compute correlations for selected variables or between selected variables using listwise or pair deletion of the variables. You can compute correlations using plausible values, so either between plausible values or between plausible values and other variables. The correlation coefficient that I compute is the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. And the last analysis type is percentiles. So you can compute score points in the distribution that separate a given proportion of the population from the rest. So you can compute, the 5th percentile or the 75th percentile, and so on. You can do this for plusval values or for any other variable in the data file. So now that we're on the analysis module screen, we're going to do a few things. First, we have to select the data, and we're going to select here from the PIAC folder, household data, SPSS, PRG USH P1, and it's going to give us the US household data that we downloaded, and we showed you how to get this data from another video. Open. We're going to tell the program that it is a PIAC dataset, and then analysis types PIAC. And in our first example, we're going to compute percentages and means, and we'll see that the grouping variables highlights here. So we're going to do percentages and means by educational level, and there's a educational level variable there at level 3, and you see that the IDB analysis has a search function here. Click on the file, move it over to the grouping variables. Then we're going to do plusval values. We're going to do the average literacy. That's going to be by ed level within country. And we're going to define that as, and we're going to write that to our work directory. And we're going to call this mean literacy by ed level. And we're going to start SPSS. And you'll see that you get a syntax window where you have the specifications for the analysis. Now to run this, you can do either Control A followed by Control R, or you can just run all. Once the program is finished running, you will see that we have descriptive statistics by educational level, and we have here the results for the 10 plusval values. We can look at the minimum, the maximum, the average score, and the standard deviation. We have the results unweighted and weighted. Then we also get a report table where we see the percent of people at each educational level. And then we see the average literacy score, 226 to 261 to 298. And here we'll see that they go up the more education the person has. In the graphics, we see the graphical representation of the same results. So the results get higher as the educational level increases. And we also see one last thing here in the work directory that's going to be in our PIAC data work folder. We see that we have several files, including a file that has significance results by ed level for PV lit. So you'll see here that there's multiple outputs that you get when you run just a simple means percentages with a single variable. Another type of analysis that we could do as an example is we could look at benchmarks. So here, benchmarks. And here we want to look at, in this case, we want to use the same ed level variable. So we want to look at ed level, move it here as a grouping variable. And we want to see literacy again. And when we click here, we'll see the benchmarks. They'll be listed. The ones for the problem solving in technology-rich environment scale, and for literacy and numeracy, we want to select that. And what this analysis is going to tell us is the percent of people within each one of those levels by educational level. We're going to define the output, and we're going to call this proficiency by level. Start SPSS. Run all. And once the analysis is done, you'll get similar results. You get the descriptive statistics for each one of the possible values by ed level, weighted and unweighted before. You get a report table with the percent of people at each educational level by performance group. And you get perhaps a more telling result is the graphical representation of the percents of people. So we'll see that those that have high levels of education have higher percentages of people at the higher performance groups, which is sort of expected. So these are two examples on how to use the IDB analyzer. Rather than continue on, I'm going to refer you to a website. If you click on a search engine, IDB Analyzer Videos, you will see that a series of videos on using the IDB Analyzer comes up, and you can look at those if you're interested in a particular analysis. So you'll see introduction, working with linear regression, benchmarks, etc. And to complement that, before we conclude, a few loose thoughts. First of all, there are other analyses that you can do that are not included in the IDB analyzer. So these are always possible. But remember the principles: to take into account the sampling uncertainty, and that means repeat according to the sample design using the replicate weights and summarize according to the formula, and take into account the measurement uncertainty, and by that we mean repeat the analysis 10 times and then combine the results according to the formula. This is when you're using plausible values. In a separate video, we'll be discussing the implications of the sample and the assessment design in the analysis that lead you to have to conduct these replications. Thank you for watching. For more information or comments about these videos, please write to egonzalez@ets.org. Thank you.
This video was made possible by the Institute of Education Sciences of the U.S. Department of Education, through Grant R305B160020 to Educational Testing Service. The opinions expressed are those of the authors and do not represent views of the Institute or the U.S. Department of Education.